My fiancée left me for working too much, but when she refused to leave my house and manipulated my mother, I discovered she was dating my cousin, and nobody told me. I'm 28 years old. I work the night shifts at the restaurant my family has been running for like 15 years, and honestly, I need to get this out because what happened 3 months ago still has my head all messed up. Grace, my ex-fiancée, left me after 4 years together, and what came after was so twisted that sometimes I still wake up thinking, did all that really happen? I guess I should start from the beginning. When things still made sense and I thought we were going to get married and have kids and all that shit they sell you in the movies, Grace and I met in college, like at one of those awkward parties where everyone's kind of uncomfortable but pretending to have a good time, you know. She was studying graphic design. I was doing business administration because my dad basically forced me to study something that could help with the family restaurant. Anyway, we started dating, and for the first 2 years everything was amazing. I mean, we had our normal fights, but nothing major. We moved in together after graduating, to a house that's technically mine because I bought it with help from my parents. But it was never an issue between us. It was our house. Period. I started working full-time at the restaurant, doing the night shifts because those are the roughest and my dad's getting old. He's like 60 years old and can't handle the pace anymore. The thing is, the night shifts are brutal. Like I'd get home at 2 or 3 in the morning completely destroyed, smelling like food and with swollen feet. And Grace worked from home doing freelance designs, so her schedule was super flexible. At first she said she didn't mind, that she understood it was my family's business and that it was temporary until we hired more staff, but over time she started complaining more and more. That I was never home for dinner, that on weekends I slept in late because I'd worked until 3 in the morning, that we didn't have quality time together. And I got it. Seriously. It's not like I was insensitive about it. But I also couldn't just abandon my family like that out of nowhere, you know what I mean? Like 6 months ago, the complaints became more frequent. Grace started making passive-aggressive comments like, "Oh good, that the restaurant needs you more than I do." Or stuff like, "I guess tonight you're also going to come home when I'm already asleep." I tried explaining to her that it was temporary, that we were looking to hire someone to cover part of my shifts, but she'd just look at me with that face like, "Yeah, sure, Owen, whatever you say." We had several bad fights about this, like the kind where you both end up yelling and saying things you regret later, but we always worked it out. Or so I thought, because turns out she'd been holding everything in for months and planning to leave me, but I found that out later. The day she left me was a Wednesday. I remember it perfectly because it was my day off, and we'd planned to go to the movies or something. I got home, around 6 in the evening after doing some shopping, and Grace was sitting on the couch with that serious expression that lets you know something bad is about to happen. I sat down and she let it all out at once, like no preamble or anything. She just said, "Owen, I need to talk to you about us." And I already knew what was coming, but I still sat there waiting for her to say the words. She told me she couldn't go on like this anymore, that she felt lonely all the time, that the work at the restaurant was more important to me than her, and that she'd made the decision to end the relationship. 4 years, a marriage proposal I made a year and a half ago, wedding plans for next summer, and she threw it all in the trash in 5 minutes. What hurt the most was that she didn't even seem sad. She was like super calm and decided, as if she'd already processed everything, and I was the only one sitting there feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I tried to reason with her, told her we could go to couples therapy, that I could talk to my dad about reducing my hours, that we'd do whatever was necessary, but she just shook her head and said, "It's too late, Owen. I've already made my decision," and that was it, I guess. 4 years ended in a 20-minute conversation on our couch. What came after was even more surreal. I expected Grace to start packing her stuff and move in with a friend or back with her parents, but no, she stayed, like literally kept living in my house as if nothing happened. She slept in the guest room, kept using the kitchen, watched Netflix in the living room, and I was there like, what the hell is happening? I asked her when she was planning to move out, and she told me, "I need time to find a place. I can't just leave overnight." And like an idiot, I gave her a week, thinking it was the right thing to do because we'd been together so long and I didn't want to be the bad guy in the story. But the week passed, and Grace was still there. Every time I brought up the topic, she'd say she was still looking, that apartments were super expensive, that she needed more time. It got to the point where I was sleeping in my own house, feeling like an intruder, walking on tiptoes so I wouldn't bother her, and she was just there all chill, as if it was her right to stay in my house after having left me. The tension was unbearable. Like I'd come home from work and she'd be in the kitchen eating cereal, and we'd look at each other and nobody would say anything. Just that awkward silence that makes you want to scream. And then she did something that still makes my blood boil when I think about it. Grace called my mom. Yeah. She called my mom and told her this whole story about how I was pressuring her to leave, how she had nowhere to go, how she was going through a really difficult time and needed understanding. My mom is one of those people who always wants to keep the peace and help everyone, the type of woman who'd give her last dollar to a stranger if they needed it. So my mom called me and said, "Owen, I know you're hurt, but Grace needs more time. Don't be cruel. Let her stay a few more weeks until she finds something." And I'm there thinking, seriously? My own mother is defending the woman who just broke my heart? That night, I got home and exploded. I told Grace she had 3 days to pack her stuff and get out, that I'd been patient enough, that I didn't care if she had to go to a hotel or to her parents or whoever, but that she couldn't keep living in my house. I also told her I needed her to give me back the engagement ring, which had cost like 3 months of my salary and was a family ring that had belonged to my grandmother. Grace got all dramatic, saying I was being horrible and selfish, that she just needed a little more time, but I was fed up. I told her, "Grace, you broke up with me. You can't break up with me and then expect me to let you live in my house indefinitely as if nothing happened." She finally packed. It took her 2 full days, and I swear she did it as slowly as possible just to annoy me. She packed every damn thing she had, and when I say everything, I mean even the spices from the kitchen that she'd bought. She took half the dishes, some furniture that technically we'd bought together, and she even took the giant stuffed dog I'd won for her at a fair 3 years ago. She gave me back the engagement ring but threw it on the kitchen table like it was garbage, without saying anything. The day she finally left, I was at work. Like I specifically left early that day because I didn't want to be there when she picked up the last of her stuff. And when I came back, the house felt empty and weird, like someone had ripped parts of it out. And that's where I thought it was all over. That I could start moving forward and healing and all that motivational crap people tell you when you go through a breakup. But no, the universe had other plans. Like 3 days after Grace left, I was cleaning the closet in the guest room where she'd been sleeping, and I found a notebook. At first I thought it was just some random notebook she'd forgotten, but when I opened it, I saw it was her diary. I know reading someone's diary is wrong, like it's an invasion of privacy and all that. But we were already broken up and honestly curiosity got the better of me. You know what I mean? What I read made me feel like a complete idiot. Grace had been writing in that diary for months, since October of last year basically, and every page was a complaint about me. That I was boring. That I never surprised her with romantic details. That her mom was right when she told her I wasn't good enough for her. That she was tired of pretending everything was okay. There were entries where she fantasized about what her life would be like without me, what kind of man she'd want to meet next, even a list of things she'd do differently in her next relationship. And the worst part is all this was from N months before she left me. Like she'd already decided to break up with me for a long time, but stayed there, living in my house, sleeping in my bed, letting me believe we were working on our problems. It took me like a week to process all that information. I didn't tell anyone about the diary because I was embarrassed. Like admitting your fiancé had been secretly hating you for months isn't exactly something you want to announce to the world. But then I started getting messages. First it was Nicole, Grace's best friend, who sent me a super long text basically telling me I was a monster for kicking Grace out of the house. How could I be so insensitive? That she was devastated, and I only thought about myself. Then it was other mutual friends, like people we knew together, and who apparently Grace had been calling to tell them her version of the story, where I was the villain and she was the innocent victim. What frustrated me most was that nobody asked for my version. Everyone you assumed I was the bad guy because Grace got there first with her narrative. And I didn't want to be that person who goes around defending themselves and talking bad about their ex. I wanted to take the high road and just move on with my life. But it was hard when half our social circle was sending me hate messages. I responded to Nicole with a short message, telling her she didn't know the whole story and that I preferred not to talk about it. And I blocked the people who were most aggressive in their messages. My mom called me like 3 times asking if I was okay, clearly worried about what Grace had been telling her. Like 2 weeks after Grace left, she contacted my mom again, this time to supposedly apologize. She told my mom she'd been reflecting a lot about everything that happened, that she understood she might have been unfair to me, that the breakup had been difficult for both of us, and that she regretted having involved my family. My mom called me all excited, saying, "See, Owen, Grace is a good girl. Everyone makes mistakes. Maybe you should talk to her and see if you guys can work things out." And I'm there thinking, Mom, seriously? After everything she did to me, you want me to get back with her? I told her no, that part of my life was closed and that I needed to move forward. Like a month and a half maybe passed, and I was starting to feel better. I kept working at the restaurant. I'd started going out more with my friends who weren't part of Grace's circle. I was even considering dating someone new eventually. And then Hunter, one of my friends from college, came to the restaurant one night. He sat at the bar and ordered a beer, and I could see he had that face like, I need to tell you something, but I don't know how. Finally, after like 20 minutes of awkward conversation, he told me, "Look, Owen, I don't know if you want to know this, but I saw Grace the other day. She was with a guy, and from how they were acting, like, very lovey-dovey and affectionate, he definitely wasn't just a friend." Honestly, my first reaction was like, well, it's her life. We're not together anymore. She can date whoever she wants. But there was something in the way Hunter said it that made me feel like there was more to the story. I asked him where he'd seen them, and he told me at a bar downtown, that kind of hipster bar where they sell super expensive craft beers and local bands play on weekends. I thanked him for telling me and kept working, but all night I kept thinking about it. It wasn't that I was jealous exactly. It was more like, seriously, she's already with someone? That's how long it took her to get over 4 years of relationship? 2 days later, Robert, a regular customer at the restaurant who's super nosy and always knows everyone's gossip, came up to me while I was cleaning some tables and said, "Hey Owen, did you know your ex is with your cousin Dylan?" And I froze. Dylan is my dad's sister's son. He's like 26 years, old, works at an insurance company, and he'd always been like, not super close, but someone I got along with. We'd go to family gatherings together, play video games sometimes, stuff like that. I asked Robert if he was sure, and he said yes, that he'd seen them at that same bar a few days ago, and they were very affectionate, kissing and everything. I felt like I'd been punched. Not only was Grace already with someone new, she was with my cousin who'd met through me, who'd come to our house for dinner like 1,000 times, who knew the whole story of our relationship. I finished my shift almost on autopilot. I don't even remember what I did the rest of the night. I just know that when I got home, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the dark living room, trying to process what I'd just discovered. The next day, I called Dylan. I didn't want to confront him on the phone, but I also didn't want to see him in person because I knew I was going to explode. I sent him a message saying, we needed to talk, and he responded super casual, like, "Sure, cousin, what's up?" I called him on my lunch break and told him straight, "I found out you're with Grace." There was a long silence, like uncomfortably long. And then Dylan said, "Look, Owen, yeah, we've been dating, but it wasn't something planned, it just happened." I asked him since when, and he told me like 3 weeks, that they'd run into each other at a coffee shop by chance and started talking and things flowed naturally. 3 weeks. Grace had been dating my cousin for 3 weeks, and nobody had told me anything. I asked Dylan if it didn't seem weird to him, like dating his cousin's ex, and he told me that Grace and I had already broken up, that she was a free person and so was he, and that he wasn't going to ask permission to be with someone. Technically, he was right, but that didn't make it feel any less like a betrayal. I told him I thought it was disrespectful, that of all the people in the world he had to choose my ex, and he got defensive saying I was being dramatic, that it wasn't that big a deal. I hung up the phone, feeling worse than before. That afternoon, Grace sent me a message. It was the first time we'd talked directly since she'd moved out. The message said something like, "Owen, I know you found out about Dylan and me, and I'm sorry you had to find out that way. Can we talk?" I didn't want to talk to her. Honestly, I just wanted to block her and forget she existed. but I also had like a million questions spinning around in my head. I responded that yes, we could meet at the coffee shop where we used to go on Sundays, that place near the park that makes incredible lattes. We met the next day. Grace arrived like 10 minutes late, with different hair, like she'd cut and dyed it a lighter shade, and she looked good, which annoyed me because I looked like shit after weeks of sleeping badly and eating nothing but restaurant food. We sat at a table in the back and she started with, "Owen, I want you to know I never wanted to hurt you." And I almost laughed because how were you not going to hurt me? You left me. You stayed living in my house as if nothing happened. And now you're with my cousin. She got all serious and told me that Dylan and she had connected in a way she'd never felt with me, that sometimes things just happen, that she couldn't control her feelings. I asked her if they were already together before she left me, and she swore no, that everything had started after. I don't know if I believed her, but it didn't matter much at that point either. I told her I thought it was incredible that of all the people on the planet she'd chosen someone from my family, and she told me she hadn't planned it, that it had just happened. We kept talking for like 20 more minutes, basically going in circles, her trying to justify what she'd done and me trying to understand how someone can be so selfish. In the end, I stood up and told her I didn't want to talk to her again, that I hoped she'd be happy with Dylan, and to please leave me alone once and for all. I left that coffee shop feeling empty. Not angry, not sad, just empty, like I'd spent all my emotional energy and had nothing left. I blocked Grace on all social media, deleted her phone number, saved all the photos we had together in a folder deep in my computer because I couldn't delete them yet but didn't want to see them either. With Dylan, it was more complicated because he's family, you know, so I couldn't just cut him out of my life. I stopped responding to his messages, started avoiding family gatherings where I knew he was going to be, and when someone asked, I just said we were going through a difficult phase. My mom eventually found out about Grace and Dylan. I think one of my aunts told her the gossip, and she called me super worried. She asked me how I felt, and I told her the truth, that I felt betrayed not just by Grace but also by Dylan, and that I needed space from both of them. My mom told me she understood, that what they'd done wasn't right, and that if I needed to talk, she was there. It was the first time I felt like someone in my family was really on my side in this whole mess. It's been like 3 months since all this exploded. Grace and Dylan, according to what I've been told, because I don't ask, but people tell me anyway, are still together, and apparently things are going super well between them. There are photos of the two of them on social media, like those sappy photos where they're hugging and smiling, and every time someone tells me, "Oh, Owen, have you seen the photos of Grace and Dylan?" I just say I'm not interested and change the subject. Some friends have asked me if I'm thinking about dating someone new, and honestly, I'm not ready yet. It's not that I'm devastated over Grace. I think that ship sailed a while ago. It's more that this whole thing left me with like zero trust in people. The restaurant is still the same, like I still work the night shifts. Because at the end of the day, it's my family's business, and I'm not going to abandon it over a breakup, however painful it was. My dad finally hired someone to help with some shifts, so at least now I have like one more day off a week, which is good. I've been using that time to do things I never did with Grace, like go to the gym, learn to play guitar, see friends I hadn't seen in years. It's not like my life is perfect now or anything, but at least it's mine, you know? Last week, my mom invited me to a family dinner and asked if it bothered me if Dylan was going to be there. I told her yes, it bothered me, but that he was family too, and I couldn't avoid him forever. I went to the dinner. Dylan was there with Grace, and it was the most awkward thing in the world. Nobody knew what to say. Everyone trying to act normal, while the elephant in the room was so obvious it practically occupied its own chair. Dylan tried to talk to me, and I was polite but cold, answered with monosyllables, and left early saying I had to work the next day, even though it was a lie. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive Dylan or Grace, honestly. Part of me thinks that maybe with time things will become less painful, and I'll be able to be in the same room with them without feeling like someone's squeezing my chest. Another part of me thinks that what they did was so ugly that there's no going back, that some betrayals just don't get forgiven. And that's okay, I guess, not having all the answers. The only thing I know is I'm not going to let this define me. Like I'm not going to be that bitter guy who can't get over his ex forever. But for now, I'm okay with keeping my distance and focusing on myself. Yesterday, one of the new waiters at the restaurant asked me if I had a girlfriend, and I told him no, that I'd gotten out of a long relationship a few months ago. He asked me if I was looking to date someone, and I told him, maybe eventually. But that for now, I was fine. Alone. And it's true. Honestly, I'm fine. Not incredible, not perfect, but fine. And after all the drama of the last few months, being fine feels like a pretty big victory.